Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tawana Rivers. This is the 10K Project, and we are here again this week to host another amazing Black founder who is raising capital for his project. And we are super excited to hear what tonight's founder has to show us. But first, we always begin with the campaign page and show you the high-level deal terms of the campaign so that you know exactly what it is you are being offered, right? So I am going to share my screen. This campaign page is also the place that you'll go to do some of your preliminary due diligence. All right, so the company's name is PerVista. It's AI-powered firearm detection to protect America's classrooms. So as you can imagine, this was a very, very special campaign when I came across it. Anytime we can do anything to protect our youth, we must. And so I am so excited to have you guys hear all about this project this evening. They've already raised $66,350 from 47 investors. That's really good from 47 investors. Very, very well done, sir. The minimum investment is $100. This is a future equity opportunity. The company's valuation is $5.4 million. There is an early bird bonus, right? So the first $100,000 of investments will be in a safe with a $5.4 million valuation cap and a 20% discount. So there's still some room left in the early bird terms, right? And I know I've said this before for those of you who follow all the time, but whenever there are early bird terms, I like that because that means it's preferential terms for those people who got in early. And so if this is a deal that you are going to be interested in after you hear the presentation, this is one of the reasons why you don't want to procrastinate, because if you're going to invest anyway, you want to invest to get the early bird terms. Okay. That was not investment advice. That was just common sense advice. Like, if you're going to do it anyway, get in early and get the preferred terms. As I always tell you guys, look through the entire campaign page. Why? Because the founders put a lot of energy and effort into making sure the campaign page has everything you need to know, that answers all of the questions that you may have. And so you'll see there's a lot of information here that you'll want to go through. After the presentation this evening, it's perfect time to do it. But I also want to put you in the area that I think is one of the most important areas on any campaign page, and it's the ask a question section. After you leave this evening and you've asked the questions you think you have, you will think of more. And when you think of more, this is the place you want to go to ask those additional questions, and Mr. Wright and or his team members will respond to you. This is also the place that if you're not sure what to ask, right? Because maybe you're new to this process, you want to see what other people have asked, because they could be great questions that give you some insight into the project. Even more than tonight's presentation, or a nice addition to tonight's presentation, right? So this ask a question section is critical. All right, so with that said, I am going to stop sharing. I just wanted to show you guys high level. We'll be putting that campaign link in the chat throughout the evening. We'll also put it in the comment section of the Facebook live stream, so you'll have it right there whenever you need it. All right. Vinod, thank you so much again for joining, sir. And I am so grateful to have you here. And I cannot wait for you to share with the community the amazing work you're doing at PerVista. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tawana. The pleasure is mine. So what I'm going to do is I am going to share my slides so you have a chance to see exactly what goes into the solution. All right, so as Tawana shared, the name of our solution is PerVista, and PerVista uses AI to detect firearms. And we since moved away from just saying that we detect firearms and that we detect weapons. And I'll explain a little more about why we made that distinction. So the way that works is we do leverage AI to analyze video streams from surveillance cameras in real time to detect weapons. And our goal there is to make sure we're proactively notifying public safety authorities when a weapon is detected. And by doing so, we are hoping to head off the proliferation of active shooter events. And why this is critical for us. So when you take into account what is happening in schools, in the year 2010, there were 10 school shootings, which is still far too many. But by 2023, this number had proliferated to 346. And what's most disturbing about this proliferation is that we don't hear about a lot of those incidents. So just here in Maryland alone, last year, there were 20 incidents, and we expect that number to continue to increase exponentially. So as I said, the number is going up year over year, and we do expect that trend to continue, unfortunately. But this does have applications that go beyond schools and hospital systems. We are also working with Baltimore Orioles, some other notable clients as well, but this has applications that extend to restaurants, shopping centers, other retail locations, office buildings, churches, anywhere where people assemble in public places. So we are ideally looking for locations that do have multiple cameras, so we're able to get a perspective all around the location, but it can work with a location that has a single camera. I mean, an example of that could be a gas station where there's one entry and exit point. And what we're seeing is because of the rise in active shooter events and mass shootings, it is a tremendous liability for people who are responsible for keeping people secure in those locations. So there is a huge appetite in terms of solutions that can help to address the rising challenge. And in terms of people who this applies to, of course, it does apply to people that are making decisions for schools and hospital systems, but law enforcement is also a stakeholder of this solution. So how does the solution work? So we do want to make sure that people are aware of which way things are trending. So something that's built into our platform is for every subscriber, we do have predictive analytics that are making people aware of the crime trends in their jurisdiction. In addition to that, we do have a secure online storefront that allows people to purchase the cameras that work with the solution. And one thing I do want to say there is the solution does work with existing security cameras as well, as long as they can connect to the internet. And what we do is we take what's called an RTSP stream, and we just pull that into our solution, and we're analyzing it frame by frame against our data set of firearms. And what that allows us to do is we have to develop a machine learning algorithm that is looking for a match against the data set we've created. And what we've done is we are able to label whether it's a long gun or a short gun. And the reason that's relevant is because the response is going to vary depending on whether it's an AR-15, for example, versus a 9mm. So that provides public safety authorities who are responding to the scene with real-time situational awareness. Something else we're also proud of in our solution is that we are also using drones. And where that would be helpful is in a case like what happened in Uvalde in May of 2022, where over 200 police officers converged on the scene, but stayed back for more than 2 hours because they were not sure what they were dealing with. So in the case of our solution, what we would be able to do is to go with the drone from the outside and stream that video the same way we can with the stationary surveillance camera, and let the police officers know that there's one person on the third floor, he has an AR-15, and that way they know exactly who to respond to and what they're dealing with. So in terms of the solution, every implementation is slightly different. And the reason that's relevant is because what works at one university, for example, might be a little different depending on the characteristics of the campus. So what happens is every customer is able to benefit from the unique characteristics of all of the other clients on the platform, because it is going back to a central machine learning algorithm that is securely stored in the cloud. So every client does own their own data, but we have a machine learning model that is running 24/7 and learning and making sure that all customers are able to benefit. What that allows us to do is to adapt over time and to improve the results and the efficacy of the solution. In addition to that, it is hosted in AWS right now, and that's monitored 24/7. And as I shared before, we're always getting better in terms of our detections. And we also want to make sure that we're taking into account different privacy concerns. When we're talking about hospitals, of course, there's HIPAA in terms of personally identifiable information. And with students, there are standards like FERPA that we're taking into account. So I want to emphasize that we're detecting firearms. We're not doing facial recognition. So what we're looking for is a match against a firearm. And once that match is made, then we're notifying public safety authorities. So this is a tremendous market when you just take into account K-12 schools. So globally, that's more than 3 trillion for schools alone, and that's growing 7% year over year. And what we're looking to do in the short term is target the domestic market across the US. And that's growing 9% year over year. And that's at 3.9 billion. And our goal is to capture 10% of the market. We do know who the major players are in the market, which would factor out to $390 million. So in terms of the competition, these are our major competitors, Verkada, Zero Eyes, and OmniAlert. And the way that we differentiate against them is, number one, with our drone technology, because that is built into our solution. We also have the vulnerability index, which is the predictive analytics that are built in upfront to keep people secure and give them different what-if scenarios they can do to keep themselves secure. And we also allow for the solutions for equipment to be securely purchased through our solution. And we're always looking to improve. So the way that we derive our revenue is from 3 different sources. The majority of it comes from subscriptions. So this is a SaaS solution that is charged per camera per month. In addition to that, we also charge an average of 10% for anything that's purchased through the marketplace. And the last is for upfront implementations, installations, and monitoring, maintenance services. So, like I said, the lion's share of our revenue is going to come from the subscriptions, but we do have other sources of revenue as well. So the way that we intend to get penetration is really through channel partners, resellers. So right now we are concentrated in the Washington, D.C. and Baltimore regions. But the way that we're looking to go across the U.S. is by partnering with channel partners who can offer the services in addition to what they're already doing for their existing clients. So in 2023, we did do a soft launch of select clients. And what we're focused on now is really increasing awareness of the platform and expanding across the US. And then in 2025, and possibly before, we are looking to expand internationally. We're already having conversations with stakeholders from Brazil. And to put that in perspective, the reason that's significant is that Sao Paulo, which is where we're looking, is twice the size of New York. That's 13 million residents alone. And then when you factor in the surrounding areas of Sao Paulo, that's another 10 million residents. So a tremendous opportunity there alone. But in addition to that, we're also looking at DoD and DHS applications. And what we're proposing for DoD is to expand our solution beyond firearms and knives and to take a look at detecting drones. So what we're proposing for the US Navy is to extend our solution. Right now, we're using what's called an electro-optical signal, which is essentially the same way your eyes see, and extending that to pull in an infrared signal, which will allow us to take in heat signatures, and a radar signal as well, which will allow us to see movement, and combine those 3 different streams of data into a single event, and to use deep learning to make determinations about whether it's a UAV swarm or something else that could be more benign, like a swarm of insects or a flock of birds. So that just gives you a feel for strategically where we're planning to take the solution. So in terms of our traction, as of December 2023, we did have 5 beta users on the platform, and we have since expanded that. And one of the challenges we found very early is our ideal target customers were schools and hospital systems. And the reason we targeted schools and hospital systems is because we do charge that subscription fee by camera, by license, by camera per month. And as I said before, we're really looking to get as many of those as possible. And of course, schools and hospital systems typically do have a lot of cameras and locations that need to be covered. But the challenge with schools and hospital systems is they take a long time to make a decision. And then when they make a decision, their budgets tend to be tight. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to gain traction more quickly. And what we did to account for that is we developed a companion platform that is essentially the same technology, but it's a video management solution where we can go in and sell directly to those other customer types that I talked about before, the retail locations, churches, and other places that can make a decision more quickly than schools and hospital systems. And we've branded that as Fluent, which allows us to do different marketing campaigns for essentially the same technology. So with Fluent, we're able to do some pretty creative things, but things that you may be familiar with through solutions like ADT or Ring that do vehicle detection, people detection, animal detection. We can do the same thing, but the biggest difference is that in addition to those object detection types, we also detect firearms. So by focusing on Fluent, we are actually able to sign people up a little more rapidly than we can with people who are more focused on the enterprise level solution. So we did launch our WeFunder campaign last month, and we've been able to get a decent amount of traction. One thing that I am excited about is that next month and toward the end of April, we are taking a delegation out to Silicon Valley for Startup Grind to present the solution there and to hopefully gain some additional awareness and investment into the platform. And something else that is significant is that on October 31st, we did have a state bill filed in Maryland on our behalf. It was pre-filed, and it looks like that bill is going to pass. But what's significant about this bill is that if it passes on July 1st, every school system in the state of Maryland will have to evaluate the technology. So pretty excited about that because it gives us a tremendous opportunity to gain traction in the school systems across the state of Maryland. So for what we've done, we've gotten a lot of very good coverage. So we've been covered by Fortune magazine. We got a lot of traction from that coverage. We've been covered by WTOP, which is a local affiliate here in the Washington, D.C. region. An article was written on us, and technically, we just last week were featured on NBC4 here in Washington, D.C. We've been featured on CBS News Baltimore, Fox 5 DC, and our local community television affiliate. So that has really allowed us to increase our awareness, certainly here in the region. And one of the things that has been emphasized is that we're the only Black-owned startup in this space. And one of the things that I'm very serious about, and something I talked to Tawana about, is making sure that not only are we eliminating, hopefully, biases that are built into algorithms, but that we're also making sure that diverse developers are participating and creating the technology. And the reason that's significant is that when you take a look at where the industry is headed, a lot of the developers for AI tend to not come from the US and certainly are not as diverse as the population is. So we're looking to make sure we're addressing that as well through our development. So in terms of our team, it is a very experienced team, and I'll tell you a little bit about my background and why I'm the person to develop the solution. So I formerly served as Chief Technology Officer for EDS. Some of you will remember that company, Ross Perot's old company. It was acquired by HP. I was also Director of Technology for Hillary Clinton during her Senate reelection in 2008 presidential campaign. I was CIO for Prince George's County, which is the second largest county in Maryland. I was CIO there for 6.5 years. I was CIO for WSOC Water, which is the 8th largest water utility in the country. And I was also CIO and VP of Operations for Ironbow Technologies, which is a billion-dollar, mostly federal contractor. So I'm bringing that experience personally as a founder, but we also have a good deal of experience across our team. And certainly our board is very experienced in that they have overseen multiple exits and been at the helm of very large organizations. So we believe it's a winning team to help us to get across the finish line. So we do have fairly aggressive projections, but what we're most focused on is increasing profitability. So initially, our profit is it is a little tight, and we're looking to get that up by really leveraging lessons learned as we get more implementations on. So we're really focused on increasing profitability in the out years. So in order for us to accomplish those goals, we do have a safe note right now, which allows us to raise up to 1.235 million. And what that will allow us to do is to really focus on feature enhancement, to make sure we're bringing development and more nimble in terms of what we are able to do with responsiveness when we see there's an opportunity to improve the platform. We're also looking to focus on customer acquisition activities, which specifically is sales and marketing. We do want to make sure that people are aware of our platform and how we're differentiated against potential competitors. But in addition to that, we do want to make sure that we're focused on becoming a more robust company internally. So focused on operations. So of the 1.235 million, we have raised 352. A good amount of that is my personal investment. And as was shared before, the pre-money valuation was $6 million, but there was a bit of a discount right now for the first 100K. So that concludes my presentation. This is my contact information. I'm looking forward to answering any questions you might have.
Wonderful. Very, very good, sir. Thank you so much for that. You can stop sharing your screen so that we can be bigger.
Okay. There we go.
Very good. And since I too am a potential investor, I got some questions, right?
Sure, absolutely, please.
So the first question I have is, can you give us some examples of what kind of equipment is in the marketplace?
Sure. So in terms of equipment that's in the marketplace, and that's something I should have touched on. So we are partners with two of the leading camera manufacturers, Axis and Amprest. And the reason we're partnered with those two is there is something called the National Defense Authorization Act, which essentially means that the U.S. wants to be assured that their equipment is not coming from a hostile country, really China. So that's what the National Defense Authorization Act is. So those two camera manufacturers are NDAA compliant. So that's who we tend to recommend. But if someone does have existing cameras that are internet connected, we can work with those as well. So that's where we are on the camera front. And in terms of the drones, same thing. We are working with drones that are NDAA compliant.
Very good. Can we talk a little bit about what the subscription fees are? So I know that you charge per camera per month, right? But what does that look like in dollars and cents? And also a secondary question to that is, what's an average amount of cameras that, let's say, an elementary school would have? Because those tend to be smaller than when you get to the higher grades.
Right. So the subscription is $50 per camera per month. So it's pretty. So our average customer right now is three cameras, but that's also factoring in that some of the customers are smaller customers. So it just depends on the size of the school. I mean, some schools in an elementary school, you might have 10 cameras, whereas a high school is going to have significantly more. So it just depends on the school, but an average elementary school is going to have about 10 cameras.
Okay.
That includes both inside and outside. And
okay,
one
that
thing,
was gonna be my next question is, are they internal or external? Okay.
it doesn't matter. So the limitation of the platform is really dictated by the camera. So if you have, for example, a 4-megapixel camera is not going to be able to pick up as much as an 8-megapixel camera, but obviously an 8-megapixel camera is more expensive. And then something else that happens, on the outside with cameras, you see a lot of them are domed cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, those tend to get a little foggy, and that will affect the detection. So at a certain point, those cameras do have to be replaced.
Very good. And so you guys go in and you assess if they have
Absolutely.
something already and if they don't make recommendations.
That's right. Absolutely. And that's part of the upfront implementation.
Very good. I love that this solution is a global solution, right? I mean, and even though you're starting with hospitals and schools, I could see where this could expand to other places. I think of office buildings, right? I
That's
remember
right.
when I used to work in the office, how secure and how many security measures they took to make sure we were safe, right?
That's right.
And I could see this technology being used in office buildings, government office buildings, and all kind of places also. So
Yeah.
this is
So
great.
to that point, so our landlord they own what's called, some of you may be familiar with it, the National Harbor.
Mhm.
So they're very interested in the technology, and for some unfortunate reasons. So there have been a couple of high profile incidents at
Mm.
our office building. So we're directly across from Tanker Outlets in National Harbor. And in December, an off duty police officer was carjacked in
Wow.
our office parking lot. So, it was that. And there was another incident where, there was a dead body dumped in the parking lot over the weekend. So it's
Wow.
those kinds of things that are really making people consider the technology. And like I said, it's unfortunate, but it's still an indicator of why this technology is needed. So the reason we're working with the Baltimore Orioles is they're interested in the technology because, as you know, before a baseball game, everyone is outside of gates before the gates open. And
Right.
right next to Camden Yards, there's a hotel, and the public safety director is afraid of a scenario like what happened in Mandalay Bay some years back,
Mhm.
where the psycho was up in the hotel room firing down on the concert goers.
Right.
So that's where they're looking at the technology. So the use cases do vary by industry, but it is a common need across the board.
Yeah. Very, very good. Yeah, Edward said I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
very, very good.
Unfortunate.
You mentioned that you didn't incorporate facial recognition and you cited kind of HIPAA being one of those things.
Right.
Is that in a future phase where you can see that being part of it?
I've been wrestling with it. I mean, I've gotten the question, but I get more concerns about privacy.
Mhm.
And certainly, one of the things that just me personally, I think about how that can go off the rails, with facial recognition, because that does give you the ability to track people. And, it's just a personal thing. So maybe, but right now I really don't see it being in the platform. Of course, we do have the ability to do it, but we just don't have that turned on and don't have any plans to do so because our biggest target industries are schools and hospitals. So with
Right.
schools, you really have got to stay away from identifying children. And in
Right.
hospitals, because of privacy, because you don't want, I mean, you've got to be sensitive to people being in there for private reasons.
Right.
So yeah, I just don't see it happening unless things were to change drastically.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I love your passion around the concern for privacy. That's important. Most people don't have that same concern.
Right.
So
That's right.
that's honorable.
Yeah, so I see the question about ghost guns. Rudolph, where we started with the technology originally is we were trying to
Well,
identify the
before you answer the question, let me read Larry's
sure.
question out so everybody else can hear it. Larry said, will your technology be able to detect or eventually detect the ghost gun, which is currently unpredictable because it's becoming so popular in shootings? So first of all, tell us what the heck a ghost gun is, because I have no
Sure.
idea what that is.
So a ghost gun is where you can buy it off the internet, doesn't have a serial number. You just assemble it. You can buy the parts and put it together, but it's essentially untraceable. But it can do the same damage as another manufacturer like a Glock or a 6 Hour or Taurus or any of the other gun manufacturers. So the way our technology works, and I'll tell you where we started. So where we started, we did have a huge database, and we were trying to make an association with the gun manufacturer and the type. So we were, all of the manufacturers I mentioned before, those are actually built into our database. One reason that was disturbing, one reason that was troublesome is because our machine learning model has to always go and match against that huge data set of firearms, which becomes very expensive. It drives up the cost because the machine learning model is running 24/7. But in addition to that, a lot of guns look very similar. And we're not able to see serial numbers. We're not able to see a manufacturer's name, depending on how sensitive the camera is. So we backed away from that because it really wasn't necessary. What we're looking for is essentially the form factor. And we have in our platform what is called a confidence level. So we are saying we're 90% sure, for example, that this is a short gun, or we're 98% sure that this is a long gun. We're always picking up that it is a gun, but where the confidence level comes in is whether it's a long gun or a short gun. And like I said, the reason that's relevant is because the response for a long gun is going to be a lot different from the response for a short gun. So to answer the question, we will pick up a short gun because we see the form factor. We know it's a gun. Now, what that means is that there are incidents where we could potentially pick up that it's let's say a pellet gun that looks like a gun. But what we're doing at that point is we're sending that video clip and saying, okay, here's what we're seeing. And something that's built into our platform to cut down on false positives is we are verifying before it is dispatched to police. So that's a step that's built in so that we're not having police respond to the scene where it is something that's not a gun. An example of that could be a camera tripod or crutches that are black or something else that maybe we falsely label. In addition to that, another reason that's significant is because there could be a security guard, an armed security guard, or a police officer. So we want to verify before we have police come out.
Very good. Very, very good. Rudolph had the same question. So Rudolph, thank you. Larry, thank you for that question. Rain said, with the NDAA being instituted and some of the top drone manufacturers' products being in jeopardy of use in America, like DJI, what drone companies will you partner with or buy drone products and accessories from?
Yeah, we're still wrestling with that one because DJI was the one we were using before. So NDAA comes into account really when you're working with the federal government, but schools, you really don't have to worry about that standard. So we are able to use it for schools and hospitals, but for the federal government, we would have to find another manufacturer. But the good news with that is that the domestic drone manufacturers, they are expensive, but the federal government doesn't have a problem paying the cost, whereas schools and hospitals do. Schools and hospitals, we don't have the NDA to contend with, but federal government we would. And we do work with DJI.
Okay, very good. Rudolph, can you put your questions in the Q&A so that we don't lose sight of them in the chat? Anonymous says, can you explain a bit more about the monitoring/response flow? Is it real time or instant notification to authorities, or is it for just on-site monitoring? Also, what is the rate of false alarms versus successful hits?
Sure. So the way our solution works is when we go into setup, we do part of the implementation process is to say who are authorized users. So for an office building, our office building being a good example, is we do have a full-time security guard who's in the lobby. They would be notified at the same time as us. But what we're doing is we do have a call center where we're also getting those alerts and we can go in and verify. And our SLA is those are always, if it is a real event, they make it to the police in under 2 minutes. So we do detect in real time and we're going in to manually verify. And something else I want to say about the technology is we're not just taking one image, we're following. So as long as a firearm is detected, it's constantly looking. And that's also helping us to verify that it's an actual firearm. But we do want to make sure that it is a firearm before police are notified. But a good example of people who are notified in real time, let's say we're doing an implementation at a school. So I mentioned the security guards. There might be some other faculty that you want to be notified, like the principal or someone else who's on site. They would see at the same time we would.
Okay. Does the service you provide work in tandem with any kind of equipment that's going to detect it, like from like a metal detector or something like that? Like how do those kind of things play a part into it. Because I'm thinking the camera's only going to pick it up once I take it out,
That's
right?
right.
And so
That's
what
right.
happens when it's concealed? Is there any other equipment that can be used or is used at the time to kind of help mitigate some of that?
So we actually say that this is a part of a holistic security solution. So it's not meant to replace metal detectors, but it works in conjunction with metal detectors because there are lots of incidents where people are able to get around metal detectors. A lot of times, metal detectors are at the main doors, and what's happening is students are propping open the back doors or coming in and out, and they're and what happens is once they get past the metal detector, that's when we can pick it up. So we're not meant to replace a metal detector, but we do have APIs, interfaces that allow us to work with other solutions. An example of a solution we work with is ShotSpotter. So ShotSpotter can pick up gunshots, and that way we're able to increase the confidence level by interfacing with the information that comes from ShotSpotter. We're also interfacing with GIS solutions, and GIS solutions will allow us to see a building's layout. And that way we can say exactly where the perpetrator is in the building by bringing in information from GIS. So that is something that is built into our solution that we do work with other software-based solutions.
Very good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Anonymous says, good evening, Bernard. Happy that you are here with the family tonight. Two questions. So if we can leave this one up to Alicia for a little bit, I'm going to read the first one and then I'll go to the second one. I can only imagine the number of other entities tirelessly laboring to be sort of first in this market, given the climate's need and opportunity. What is your projection on time to market, and is there any anxiety there?
Yeah, so our solution it's production ready now. So it's a fully operational solution right now. But to your point, the anxiety really comes around funding. It's tremendously expensive to run AI technology. So just for us to run the technology, it's about $20,000 a month just for it to run because it is 24/7 machine learning in the cloud. In addition to that, we always want to build new things into the platform, which of course is costing money. We have to market. So our biggest anxiety is around funding. So to get us to where we are, I put a good amount of my own money into it because I started another company, took profits from that company and put it into this one. But that's not a sustainable strategy. And certainly when you're competing against people that are highly capitalized. So for us, that is something that I am focused on, trying to make sure we're raising enough money to be able to compete and carve out the market share that we anticipate. So I see your second question in terms of potential liabilities. So in our agreement, so the attorneys did build in indemnification clauses saying that we were not guaranteeing 100% detection. So that is built into our agreements. We of course are trying to make sure we're capturing everything, but we're not guaranteeing that we are going to. But I will say in testing, we are picking up. We're picking up everything we've been able to simulate. But the challenge there is that, of course, those are in controlled scenarios. So what we're trying to do is to make sure we're accounting for as many scenarios as possible. And the way that we're doing that is we have different types of people holding the guns and testing and different lighting. We've done it in the rain, we've done it at nighttime, and the whole goal is to really see where we can break the technology, and that way we can improve the efficacy of the solution. So we're always trying to see where there's a new scenario that we can build in to potentially account for any blind spots.
So I think about okay, so the camera detects something, authorities are called, and they get there, and maybe it is a threat, right? Maybe it's a legitimate threat, right?
Right.
The process worked accordingly. Are you doing anything, or have you thought about any kind of training that takes place in how your company works with the police? Like I think of my brain goes to a fire, old school fire drill, right? And how we practice. So when there was a real fire, there's no reason people don't know what to do
That's
because
right.
from the time we were children in elementary school, we've had fire drills. Like, and I feel like sometimes when police are called on the scene, there wasn't enough training for the various scenarios
That's right.
that allow them to be able to respond in a different way.
That's
And so,
right.
so how does that play? What are the relationships like with local authorities, and what's the plan for that?
Yeah, so the way this solution actually came about is there was a high profile incident in Prince George's County where three teenagers ran onto a school bus and tried to shoot another teen.
Mm,
Thankfully, the gun jammed, but because of that, our existing state's attorney reached out and asked me what technology could do to keep that from happening again in the future, which is really what got us going to develop the solution. So the solution started with a relationship with law enforcement, but also because I'm formerly the CIO for the county where we're headquartered, I have direct relationships to the police chief, the sheriff, everyone. So we've been working with law enforcement. They even come into our office to do training and walk around with the guns, and that's partially how we're able to build that data set by them bringing in their actual firearms and helping to train the model. So we are working very closely with them to build the solution out. I'm also very close to bringing a couple of retired law enforcement onto the team so we can account for real-time scenarios. So I'm very focused on that. And as we go across the country and build new relationships, we'll make sure that continues.
very good. Very, very good. Rudolph has another question. This technology would have a huge impact on public safety. HOAs would love this. Also, communities of color would benefit from a public safety standpoint. Is there a way to get this done without the NRA?
Yeah, I mean, so the reality is people are acknowledging it's a problem. And, what we've seen is because we are working closely with law enforcement, we're not, I don't anticipate issues from NRA, because we're not saying that we're taking away anyone's Second Amendment right.
Right.
We're advocating for responsible firearm ownership. But when someone breaks the law, we do want to make sure they're held accountable. And that's really the goal of the technology. It's not to take anyone's guns away. It's just to make sure that people are able to own guns responsibly and not be grouped in with people who are going into schools and other public places to create mayhem.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when I first read that question, I was like, well, why would the NRA care? Like, this is a good thing.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me, how awesome would that be for the NRA to back a program like
Yeah,
this? Because they tend
absolutely.
to be silent, right? You
Yeah.
you really don't know where they stand on things because they just stay out of it. But how awesome would it be for them to say, you know what? Yes, safety matters, and this type of technology, this type of program is important to keep our community safe.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, I've gotten some interesting informal partnerships. So one of them is so in our building, there's someone who does firearm training,
Mhm.
for someone who's getting a handgun qualification license or concealed carry. They're very interested in partnering with us. Once again, so that the stigma around firearm ownership goes away.
Right.
So they want people that are using guns the wrong way to be held accountable so that they're not being blamed, because a lot of times we're really lumping the two together. So yeah, they're very interested in partnering with us, and law enforcement is as well.
Very, very good. Very good. Talisha, do we have any questions in Facebook?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
Right.
Well,
Any other questions here in Zoom? What were you going to say, Bernard?
well, I was just going to thank everyone for being on. So on the East Coast, I know it's 8:43 here, but if someone is, the people that are across the country, everyone, I just thank you for logging in to listen. I will say that I've done a lot of very challenging things in my long technology career, but this is by far the toughest thing I've ever done. But
Yeah.
this kind of support, and certainly the positive energy behind it, knowing that we are at the very beginning of this AI advent. It means a lot. Whether you invest or not, just help me spread the word, and certainly just know that there are people of color that are developing AI solutions that make a difference.
Yeah, and this one makes a huge difference. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Our safety is everything. And so thank you for tackling this.
Yeah.
Kenneth, I see you raised your hand. You want to put your question in the Q&A? I'll give you a minute, Kenneth, if you have a question to put in the Q&A for us. So let's talk a little bit about the marketing, if we shall, right? Because it kind of, I don't even know that you would call it marketing, so to speak, but somebody's got to go to the school, somebody's got to go to the university, somebody's got to go to the hospitals and get the customers, right? How are you targeting them? I mean, are you taking advantage of conferences where the principals meet at every year, or the superintendents? Like how are you going to get the word out? Because I would imagine this is not I'm going into the local elementary school and trying to sell this. You got to go to the school board,
You do.
right?
You do. Yeah. So what I am very focused on is hiring the sales reps. There's a big conference coming up that we're targeting, ISC West. That's one. The National School Boards Association has a conference coming. So yeah, we are looking at those conferences. In addition to that, there is, I can't remember the one. So we're also advertising, I think this is next week, at the National Forum of Black Public Administrators, because government buildings are also a target for us. So yes, we are looking at conferences where we can go to increase awareness of it. So we have a few conferences where we're going to be attending and exhibiting and sponsoring as well.
Very good. Capital is obvious, but what else do you need?
I mean, at this point, capital is the biggest thing by far. So we the technology, like I said, the technology is ready for prime time. We're ready to get subscribers on it. But everything revolves around capital. I mean, to hire the sales reps, to really get the executives on board. So I'm not the only one with the big hat. It's all of those different things, but it all goes back to capital. So I mean, we are, if we don't get the capital, because that's always a question, we would just focus on what we've been doing, and that's customer acquisition. Just getting people on and really driving revenue that way. Of course, it's a slower growth pattern when you do that. So we'd like to be able to get in there quickly, especially with that big date coming up, July 1st. There are some milestones we'd like to hit before that. Capital is by far the biggest thing for us.
So let's talk about that again. Let's talk about this July date, because you mentioned it in the presentation, but as you were talking about it, I was like, wait a minute, this is huge. Like the law is on our side here.
That's right.
And this is a big play. So let's talk about that just a little bit more for anybody who may have come late.
Yeah, so I mean, to put it in perspective, Prince George's County, which is where we are, we're the second largest county in Maryland. That's 130,000 students. So massive school system across 500 square miles. Montgomery County, which is the largest county with 1.2 million residents, that's another 500 square miles. And, you have all of those schools just in those two places. So if you capture either one of those two, that's a huge flagship customer. But in Maryland, there are 23 counties and another major city, Baltimore, of course. Just a tremendous opportunity for us to go in. And with this bill, something else I neglected to mention is that there's $12 million in funding associated with it, coming from a school safety fund. So this is a bill that also has funding behind it. So what I'd like to make sure happens going into it is that we're prepared to support customers as we bring them on board, because obviously that's another expense. The more customers you have, the more expensive it is to maintain those customers, because we don't want to get people. The worst thing that could happen is we get customers before we're prepared to support them.
Got it. Larry, that is a wonderful suggestion, and I love that you thought of it. So, Bernard, one of the things we love to do here at the 10K Project is connect founders that we've experienced before with other founders where there seems to be some kind of synergy, right? And so Larry had a great suggestion. So there's a founder, Alexis Samuels. His company is FinLitX. It is a financial literacy program, but his target audience is schools. He's made amazing relationships in the New York City area and across the rest of the country. He started in New York, and so he's got like New York on lock with the school systems.
Very good.
And so Larry, that is absolutely a great recommendation. I will make that introduction this evening, because he's already done some of the heavy lifting, making those relationships, right? And
Absolutely.
so I will definitely connect you with Alexis. Larry, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and I see Rudolph had a question about this being a great fit with SBIR. I agree, Rudolph, and I have taken a look at that, and that's actually where the idea around bringing the three different streams in the electro-optical, infrared, and radar came from. So that actually doesn't exist right now. The U.S. Navy has verified that there is nothing right now that can make correlation across those three different streams. So we are very interested in going down the SBIR route. So yes, we're working on that right now. There's actually an open call for AFWorks right now. And there's one other one that we're going to submit a white paper for. But yes, we are going to go the SBIR route.
So tell us what SBIR means.
So it's, I believe it's Small Business Innovation Research. So it's a federal program where there are, so the first phase is around research and development to see whether or not it's a viable idea. So there's a good amount of funding that goes for that. It can be around 175,000 or so. And that's really just to say, okay, yes, this is something that could happen. Then phase two is around building a working prototype. So once you've proven that it's a viable concept, you go and you build the working prototype, and that's typically around 2 million. And then phase three, which is the final phase, is around commercialization. So for something like this, let's say you built something that can detect UAVs, you go through those first two phases, and then you maybe work with Homeland Security, you work with sports stadiums and others to start to sell the solution. But that's what SBIR is.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for that.
And
Rain. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
Rain, yeah, the question about the drones, in terms of partnering, yes, we do partner. We are looking to partner with subcontractors. And, there are a lot of different reasons we're looking to partner with subcontractors. But one of the biggest is that as we're looking at the signatures of the way that drones move, there's some that do it a lot better than us. And I really don't want to water down our mission by focusing too much on drones. So yes, that is a partnership opportunity for us.
Very good. And you have to have special licenses to fly drones.
Oh yeah, and especially in
Also,
the
right?
Washington D.C. area.
Oh
I
yeah, I
found
would
that
imagine so,
way
right?
because yeah, we're in National Harbor, and that DJI drone, the most expensive one, I went out and got the most deluxe drone I could find, and it wouldn't lift off outside.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, they're governed by GPS. Yeah, so yeah, it's a no-fly
Oh,
zone around Washington D.C. You've got to register with FAA and do all of these other things, and yeah, you do bump up against that, certainly in the Washington
right.
D.C. region.
Very, very good. This has been a wonderful, wonderful session. Thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much. Any final questions for tonight's founder before we give our final statements and our final ask of you? While we're waiting for final questions, I'll go first and then I'll let you close us out.
Okay.
One of the things that we do here at the 10K Project is make these connections. And so I am asking the community to tell everyone you know about this campaign. And I really feel like I need to say this, and no offense to other founders that we have had here, because you guys know how I feel about them and they know how I feel about them. But literally, our safety is at risk, right? And this is a solution that can literally save lives, right? And prevent tragedies from happening. And so do your due diligence, obviously consider investing. But I think my plea tonight for you sharing this campaign is probably more powerful than it ever has been when I've said it before. And so please share this campaign, put this link on your socials, talk about it, share it with families and your friends. This is important, right? The work is going to continue. You just heard him say it. We're not giving up, right? But this sure would be a lot easier if we had some money, right? And
Right.
so that is the phase of business where they are. And we need to do whatever we can. Think about a news story where a crisis was averted by PerVista and how we would feel as investors if we made that decision to invest, right? That's the kind that's what I want, right? I want to be able to hear, well, there was an incident, but we don't really know what happened because it seems like this company named PerVista came in and handled it, right? Like that,
Right.
like that's what's up. That's the news story we want to hear. They can only do that if they have the money to get into all of these locations, to hire the team that they need to really build this out. You heard them. The tech is there. It works, right? They're just waiting for all the other pieces to come in place. And a lot of times we have presentations and all the other pieces are in place, but the tech is not there yet. It's still kind of ideation. And so, and that's the biggest part of it all. So to hear that that part is ready to go, for me as a potential investor is huge. And so thank you so much for the work that you and your team have done
Thank you.
perfecting this and getting it to this point before coming out and asking for the well-needed capital, because that
I
matters
appreciate
from an investor standpoint.
Thank you. Thank you. And Tawana, I want to thank you for what you're doing. So I am also, I work with a guy named Cedric Nash, who started something called the Black Wealth Summit. I mentioned that when we talked.
Mm-hmm.
And, the reason the Black Wealth Summit and similar initiatives are important is because there is an estimate that by the year 2050, the average net worth of Black folks will be zero. So what you're doing is critical. Because there are multiple ways to invest. You don't have to be an accredited investor to invest, but certainly increasing awareness of unique investment opportunities is critical. Whether, like I said, whether people invest here or not, it's important that you keep doing this work, because I am very focused on, of course, technologies to keep us safe, but in parallel, also making sure that outcomes for people that look like us are a lot better than they would be otherwise. And we have to be deliberate about putting interceptive strategies in place. And what I would encourage people to do is I do have the distinction of being the only person named Bernard Wright in the world, which is good as long as you're doing good things. So what that means is that it's easy to do your due diligence on me and to see what my track record is in terms of delivering and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So it's been a pleasure to present for you tonight. And, I really look forward to the opportunity to get to know as many of you as possible.
No, that is absolutely wonderful. And I said I was going to let you close, but something else came on my spirit, so I'm going to say it. Typically, first of all, I'll say this is not investment advice. I am not a broker. This is my personal opinion as also someone who is potentially looking at this investment. But when I look at the $100 minimum that you've implemented, right, that you put in place, and how you've allowed that to be such a reasonable amount that literally the everyday investor could even save up, right? Over the course of 2, 3, 4 weeks, could save up to just get in. But for those who can do more, right? I look at the fact that you've raised over $60,000 from 47 people. That tells me people are not doing the $100 minimum, right? I can do easy math. And that tells me people are doing a lot more because they too see value in this. And so, when looking at investment opportunities, you do look at things like, what's the addressable market, right? Well, we know that this has the potential to be global, not just United States, right? We know that while he's starting with hospitals and school systems, right, K through 12, he didn't talk about universities at all. And we know how many of those there are in the country. And the same things happen at universities, right? And then when we talk about, again, the corporate office market or those national, locations like the National Harbor, like places like that are well populated with tourism. And, I think about all of the places where
That's right.
this has value as an investor, and I get excited, right? I get warm and fuzzy inside, because it tells me that there is scalability here, right? That's important as an investor when you
Yep.
are doing your due diligence. So consider all of those things when you decide for yourself if this fits in your portfolio, right? That's your decision. Doesn't matter if I like it, doesn't matter if I don't like it. But consider all of those things when you do your due diligence, because those things are powerful. And I've heard a lot of that in this presentation. So I don't want that to be lost on anyone who may be looking at this for the very first time, thinking, I'm not really sure what these people do. I came upon 10K Project. This sounds really cool, but what is this really about? We are an investment community, and we raise capital or help raise capital for Black founders who are doing amazing things. And tonight, you have heard from one of those founders. And so, Bernard, thank you so very, very much in advance for all of the lives you and your company and the people that you work for and with will save. So thank you.
You.
Very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you. Guys, you know what you understand the assignment. You know what's next. Go ahead and share this link, do your due diligence, and do what you got to do. I love you guys. Have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.